Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. This is ADX Live HD powered by Jetline Systems. So glad all of you could join us this morning. I'm DeAndre Newman from AirDailyX.net, and joining me this, should I say, morning, afternoon, evening? It's Saturday in some places. In the cases with my two guests today, Ken Hall and Tim Harris in Sydney, Australia, or Western Australia, I should say, are joining us on a Sunday morning. I believe it's just 10 minutes past 8 o'clock a.m. for the Orbix Systems developers. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Andre.
There you go.
There we go. So glad you guys could be with us this morning. I have to say, I think you guys have definitely taken the community off guard with your latest release, Papua New Guinea. I don't think anyone could have envisioned a series of airports, and of course not a series yet, but certainly with your latest release. It almost in and of itself is a series because there are so many airfields that are included in this package, along, of course, with the Port Moresby airport as well. I don't think anyone expected that something like this would come out of Orbix that is, in fact, not a part of the sort of business strategy that is the epiphany of Orbix. So I have to say, with once that release announcement came out, I think a lot of people were probably a little bit on the confused side. I think confused yet extremely excited, and that certainly speaks for myself. So just, I guess, in a few words, how did this whole thing come about, and what sort of led you in this direction?
I think, well, both me and Ken always loved Papua New Guinea, and we've always been, waiting for a Papua New Guinea FTX region, but we knew it wasn't going to happen in the short term, so we just sort of thought we'd take the bull by the horns and just do it. And so yeah, that's what we did, and we sort of kept it a surprise from everyone, even a bit of a surprise from the team as well. And we hit them with it very late in the beta, and yeah, and then just like we hit all you guys with it very, very late in the piece. But yeah, it was just a dream that we dreamt up, and we made it.
I think one of the great things about the fact that you guys waited, I think, a little later on to make the announcement, especially at a stage of development where you were so close to release, is for a lot of people that follow the AirDailyX billboard, I try to project projects as far out, and in fact, I think there's projects that are projected as far out as 2015. So it sort of gives us a bit of an idea or something of an understanding in terms of what we can expect will be delivered throughout the course of the rest of the year, and then of course probably the first quarter or two into next year. But I think the great thing are these little projects from talented developers that we just don't know about, that just sort of come out of left field, and that sort of makes it like Christmas morning throughout the year when these sort of things just kind of happen. And so naturally, this was a product that was not on the Orbix roadmap. So it's like the extra candy that shows up on the store shelf that you weren't looking for. Just the whole thing of it's announced, and then here we are a couple of weeks later, and boom, here it is, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's pretty incredible. And I have to imagine the response from the community. I imagine it's been good, but coming from your position as developers, what would you say has been the community feedback and response toward the project thus far?
Well, Ken, you want to
Oh,
go?
okay. Well, we're sort of blown away. We were hoping it would be successful because it was a new concept. We've done quite a few airports, and Tim said to me, let's do something different. Let's do something that's just more than just an airport. Let's do something where they can have an experience. And we've always followed the exploits of the bush pilots of Papua New Guinea, and these guys are just masters. I mean, they just they land these planes in the most awkward situations, and for us, that's the ultimate of flying. You know, so to be able to try something like this was just um, fantastic for us. And then when people saw it, we weren't sure if they were going to embrace it, but we're just blown away by the way people are coming back and saying ridiculous things like, we sort of nearly have to pull up and say, "Oh, come on, let's get real, guys. This is not the best airport ever done. This is not, you know." But I think it's because it's different and refreshing. I think that's what's taken them, and we're extremely happy, extremely happy.
Well, I think, Ken, the key word that you hit on the head was refreshing. And by that, number one, except for maybe freeware, and I only assume that there may be freeware out there because a lot of freeware that we've seen over the years have been from developers that were just really fed up with no one taking the time to develop something in their region, or maybe they visited a place before and it just became obvious it wasn't going to happen. And I know developers personally who have gotten into scenery development just because they wanted an airport so bad. They knew it was never going to come because it's in a remote location of the world, or maybe it's something that a mainstream developer may not consider as popular, or would sell well. So they sort of just taken it upon themselves to go into freeware and things of that nature. So again, to touch on refreshing, the fact that not only are we sort of on untouched territory as far as payware goes, at least as far as I'm aware of, but in such a great level of detail and quality that you guys have presented it is incredible. So my question is because I like to think that I'm well rounded in terms of locations around the world, and I've certainly traveled quite a bit, but I've never been to Papua New Guinea, and it's certainly a region of the world that's remained largely off my radar. One of the things I mentioned previously in one of my articles when I was showing off some of your development previews was that I was watching a movie that was based on a true story, where some cave divers were going from Australia actually into Papua New Guinea for cave diving. And for them, unfortunately, it didn't turn out too well, but there was a particular scene where they flew a helicopter out of Port Moresby and into this remote location in Papua New Guinea. And the terrain was immaculate. And I just thought to myself, wow, this is a really beautiful scenery and location. And I found myself kind of wondering, it would be great if someone would actually go into this area and develop something for it. And mind you, this was about a month ago. So naturally, my thoughts were quickly shut down by the thought that I doubt there's a large flight simulation community in Papua New Guinea. Therefore, the chances of a developer going in there and creating something in high quality is highly unlikely. And then 2 months later, here we have this terrific scenery. So my question is how did you learn about these airports? Because I certainly didn't know. I mean, obviously I knew about Port Moresby, but I certainly didn't know about a lot of these rural airstrips out here and the challenging approaches that take place. So how did you guys find out about it?
I'll let Tim
Well,
answer that.
as I mean, as Australians, we've all grown up with the Kokoda track ingrained into our history. It was the point for where our country kind of grew up. When we were faced with possible invasion in World War II, and it's a very special place for a lot of us, and a lot of us make pilgrimages there to walk the track. It's 90 miles, I think, or 90 kilometres of pretty inhospitable terrain, and it takes about 7 or 8 days, I think, to walk one way. And that's the thing that a lot of Australians have started doing in the last 4 or 5 years. But yeah, so we've all grown up with the Kokoda track in the back of our heads, and of course Papua New Guinea being such a sort of a remote and unexplored country, the air travel is the number one way to get around. The roads are very unreliable, um, and I think also the locals can be a little bit hostile at times too. Um, and so yeah, everything is air travel in Papua New Guinea. So, and I also think in the real world too, a lot of young pilots get their first break flying in Papua New Guinea. And as they say, if you can fly in PNG, then you can probably fly anywhere. So yeah, so all of the strips, Kokoda, Foggy, Minari, all those strips are all very close to places where there were major battles in World War Two, and so it's got a lot of history like that.
Well, that's certainly quite a bit of insight that I don't think we got from from the manual. I had no idea, so this is something that I've learned myself as well today, just about the historical element and definitely the cultural element that led the two of you making the decision to develop the scenery. Now, can I assume that you've made the pilgrimage, either one of you?
No, but
We'd
I'd
love to.
absolutely love to.
Well, I feel like because of this
We saw enough
development, I think
copies.
a lot of us are gonna make this pilgrimage in one way or other. And I think that's one of the great things that makes flight simulation so great is that I remember when I first came on board with Air Daily X, and that there was this general understanding that people didn't buy sceneries or airports that they had not actually visited in real life. A lot of people typically tend to stick toward their home airports or places they visited, and certainly that was the case when I very first got into flight simulation. I wanted to start looking for airports and places that I had been in real life, but after a while, those places got boring, and I wanted to start trying new places and visiting new areas. And I think what's one of the things that has made flight simulation so great is for those who are willing to sort of go off the beaten path and have an open mind towards products that represent places that they've never been, they can certainly discover the world in flight simulation pretty much in the same way that they could discover the world in real life. I mean, these places absolutely exist, and when we have third-party developments come on board and make them to their real-world counterparts, it's almost, I don't want to say it's the same because nothing is like visiting a place in real life, but nevertheless, you definitely get the opportunity to visit and learn about places that you otherwise would not have known. And I've certainly learned something new as well today. Now, I'm on my way to the helipad, and I think I might have passed it. I didn't see it on my way up, but I'm sure I'm following the track. Is that correct?
It, yeah, you've gone past it, I think, Dandre. It's back on back. I know we're getting this. There's a delay on the telecast we're getting, but I think you want to do a U-turn and go back, and you'll find it on your left.
Okay, I was looking for it, and I was like,
Yeah.
that's the thing, and that's the thing here is you really have to look. That's one of the more challenging aspects, especially about the airstrips, is that from a distance, at least for me, I found myself second guessing. Is that it or is that not it? And then you get closer and closer, and you're like, oh crap, that's it. Okay, I'm too fast or I'm too high, or I've got to turn around and come back. And another thing about the strips, which I think one of you pointed out to me earlier this week, is that the airstrips are very deceptive. They're very deceptive. So on approach, you're kind of left with this thought, oh, it's too short, I'm not going to make it. And then right when you get down to almost wheels down, then you realize, oh wow, okay, I see there's more space than I thought, or there's less space than I thought. So, or the gradient is steeper than I thought it would be. So it takes quite a bit of practice, and I've been practicing quite a bit this week, and I'll definitely do some approaches today and show off the sceneries, and so hopefully I won't embarrass myself too.
Yeah, well, we embarrassed ourselves testing it nowhere, I can tell you. I think I've got a recycle bin with about 300 twin otters in it, so um, you know, um, it's one of those places where it is a real hands-on seat of the pants stuff, and I know when I learned to fly, I learned in ultralights, and um, we flew with the attitude that um, it wasn't a matter of if your engine was going to fail; it was a matter of just when. So
Wow.
we used to practice. We used to practice landing in paddocks and all sorts of terrain, and actually even had a fuel emergency while doing a trip around Queensland, and we had to put it down in a paddock, and it was pretty hairy because it was in the middle of Queensland, and there was nothing but pineapple plantations around, and we were almost out of fuel and looking for a strip, and we couldn't find one, and we eventually landed in this paddock which had a lot of unforeseen holes in it. So we were bouncing from sort of one big melon hole to the next. But we survived it, walked away, changed a bunch of cords on the undercarriage, and away we went again, you know. Um, but for Tim and I, bush flying has always been what we love. Tim did a beautiful strip in Katoomba, which is just around the corner from him. And I remember seeing it and thinking, wow, you know, like this is the sort of scenery that I really enjoy. Um, and it's surprising the number of bushflies that are coming out of the woodwork that you didn't know existed, because up until now, if you didn't do an airport with an international terminal that they could land their NGXs on, sales suffered really quite badly. And I think this is what influenced John's decision to get us to add Port Moresby to it. And as I said, Tim did a fantastic job with it. But you know, people have been sort of embracing the both sides of it, both the international side, and then the ability to jump in something smaller and go and have a bit of a seat of the pants ride. You know, I think you've gone past it there again.
I think I've passed it again. I think it's at 12 o'clock now. I thought I had it a minute there, and then I got up close and realized it was another village. So there's a lot of small villages that you guys have added along the way, which help for points of reference and knowing that you're going in the right direction, because there's no, I don't have an official chart for the area. So for me, it's all visual. So I'm sort of
Yeah,
relying on the aids that you guys have placed along the
I
trail.
think I think if you follow the trail and stay fairly low on the trail, um, the big feature that you can recognise with Isarava is the memorial. It sort of stands out. Um, and I just might add here, we could have added more detail to this memorial, but out of respect for the Anzacs and for all of the people connected with the armed services, we purposely kept it simple, because we didn't want to feel like we were using their um, history as a sales gimmick.
Yeah,
There you go. There you go. Neil.
we also have to be really careful because we've got some quite strict laws in Australia regarding profiting from the Anzacs. Um, so we're not actually allowed to sell a product that, you know, has that word in it, or is based on that. We can include the memorial because it is actually a point of interest that is visible from the air. So, but that was, yeah, we couldn't start adding in old battlefields and you know, gravestones and things like that, just because, yeah, and just out of respect as well.
Absolutely.
Um,
I think looking at it from a slightly different perspective as well, and I don't know if ignorance would be a proper coin I'm sorry, a proper coin to term it. But for me, definitely, these are things that, ooh, whoa, I'm losing control here. Whoops. Sorry.
You better
That's
concentrate, mate,
that's
'cause
my problem. I
it's
start looking at the
multitasking.
scenery and like, ooh, that looks really nice, and then all of a sudden I'm out of control. But what I was saying is I kind of wanted to hover right over the memorial, is the fact that I think it also can stand for something where people who otherwise would not have known about it, would have never known anything about it, also have an opportunity to look at it and wonder, okay, what is that? What is its purpose? Go in and research it. And if anything, hopefully it may give a little bit more justice to what the purpose of a memorial is to make sure that, you know, what happened is not forgotten. So I think for it to be added in the simulator, which could be considered as a game for some people, for a lot of us, I don't think we would ever consider it as a game, but certainly something to pay, if nothing else, more respect to, the fact that we can research and learn something more about something somewhere else on the other side of the world that we may not have necessarily, you know, been aware of otherwise.
Yeah, just if anyone wants to learn anything more about this, who's not familiar with it, I recommend searching YouTube for Kokoda, and there's 3 or 4 really good documentaries with original footage showing the battles and the struggles. Um, and you know, back in World War II, this track was not, you know, it was a lot worse than it is now, and a lot more inhospitable. Um,
Nice
and
landing.
the,
Oh, thank you.
yes, very, I don't
Nailed
know.
it.
I see.
Okay. Wish I could do
There
that.
was also an American involvement too in this battle as well.
I've got to try to turn it
Again,
around now. Oh, I'm going to hit a tree. That's a tight space to turn around in, unfortunately. Uh, so, Tim, you were mentioning the American involvement as well. Unfortunately, there's a lot that isn't covered. I think just in our education, especially a lot of conflicts that we were involved in as a country, as America, that they actually do not cover in school. That you really don't learn about until after you've already graduated, or or when you go on to college and so on and so forth afterwards. So that's very interesting to know.
there was a lot of involvement with the American Air Force. That they also supplied a lot of the transport, a lot of the biscuit bombing, the dropping of supplies to the troops along the track because it took you know a week to get anything up the track, and it had to be carried. On people's backs as they sort of crawled up the muddy slopes on their hands and knees. So they did a lot of biscuit bombing into the Myola Flats, which are those big open grassy areas, which of interest actually are they're very volcanic soil, so nothing tends to grow there except for the grass. Um, but that was that was the scene where they did a lot of biscuit bombing of the supplies, just out chucking them out the door of the DC-3s. And there's some great stories out. I mean, I've read just about every Kokoda book that's around for just for history and for the background setting. But yeah, it's littered with aircraft wrecks from World War II as well. This location is B-25s and Kitty Hawks in a number of locations. We obviously couldn't
Add them in, right?
include any of those, but just again out of respect. But it's definitely the American involvement was quite large, but yeah, you guys probably don't know about it so much. Um, but it involved a lot of air transport help at Port Moresby, which was known as 7 Mile Aerodrome then, because it was 7 miles from the capital at that point. I think it's now only about 5 miles. And also there were a regiment, or I'm not sure the term you use, a battalion of American troops as well that were involved there. And I think your guys were also like our guys in that they were we call them the Home Guard or the Reserve Force. I think you guys have got another name for that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it was certainly a wild place for these guys to begin their overseas deployment.
And there
Everyone,
was a lot of help. Sorry, Tim.
yes,
Go on.
I was
No,
going to say,
I was just saying there was a lot of help from the Fuzzy Wuzzy. They call them the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels. The natives played a big role in helping the Aussies get um, through this, didn't they, Tim?
yeah, that was probably the only way that we managed to turn back the Japanese in this theatre was the help of the local guys, the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels, and there were some horrific stories of people being carried back on the shoulders of these guys for days on end on the backs of these guys. They did a wonderful service, and there's actually a couple still remaining alive as well that everyone visits as they go along the track to pay their respects to.
It's actually something that I'm now thinking about adding for a future trip myself. It's really unfortunate because for us over here, I mean, these stories sort of get lost in the Iwo Jimas and the Hiroshimas and Nagasaki's, and then of course our presence in Europe as well. I suppose. I can't tell you why that this wouldn't be covered in schools locally here, especially to the extent it's covered there. I mean, naturally, this was something that was much closer to home for you all. But nevertheless, it's an important part of history, definitely an important part of the war. So I think what the two of you have done, if I add my own opinion to it, is I think you've brought in, you've taken something that maybe a lot of people didn't know about and sort of brought it to light. So if nothing else, I hope it gives it further justice as opposed to a thought that it could be considered disrespectful by recreating such a thing virtually. Is that hopefully more people will be influenced and inspired to research and learn more about what took place here and about the people who make this pilgrimage every year. It's very important.
Well, it was actually wasn't very well known in Australia either until probably about 10, 15 years ago, when more attention was started to be placed upon it because of the anniversaries started coming up, the major anniversaries, the 50 years and the 60 years. And you know, as a nation in Australia, we've always talked about Gallipoli, which was a World War One event, which was, you know, an absolute disaster really from the humanitarian point of view, and so was Papua New Guinea for that matter. But it's been made a lot more popular. Obviously, there's been some. There was a pretty good movie that came out, Australian movie called Kokoda. And so, you know, I'd say in the last sort of 15 years, it's really started to almost rival Gallipoli in terms of, you know, our greatest moments or something. Um, Notably, the battle on the Kokoda Trail was actually the first time that the Japanese got pushed back in World War II. I mean, up to that point, they'd been completely unstoppable. And admittedly, the force that were in Papua New Guinea were, you know, a crack marine invasion force. They were highly trained, really well equipped for jungle warfare. And the poor guys that we sent there were the home guard, because Papua New Guinea was an Australian territory up until the 70s. It 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 was, you know, we had our home guard here, and the rule was that they were not allowed to be sent out of the country. So Papua New Guinea was determined as still part of the country. So all the you know, farmers' lads and all the guys who called up to help at the last minute all got sent to Papua New Guinea to fight. And so most of the early battles, you know, on the Kokoda track were just literally you know, guys with guns, as all of our main, you know, battle-hardened proper Australian infantry force were all stuck in Africa and Palestine, and so yeah, it's those guys that pushed them back, and then obviously the proper AIF came in sort of midway through the peace, because we ended up fighting a massive withdrawal, you know, a tactical withdrawal, and we got back to within sight of Port Moresby, and then it wasn't until the proper army turned up with that we'd actually managed to start pushing them back again. But yeah, no, you know, I love history and geography, so this is all up my alley.
That's very terrific. I'm actually getting a very interesting history lesson myself. In fact, history is my favorite subject, especially World War II. I'm a huge World War II buff, so just to learn more about what I didn't know, I think it's great. Okay, so this is where we are now. We're going to cross our fingers and hope we don't get an out of memory error. If we do, we'll just fire back up. But now we're making the tradition from the helicopter right on into the twatter. So, Tim, I'm just looking for your repaint. Now, this is your paint, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see. There's a funny name. Is it Jan Keys? Is that correct?
That's he's quite a prolific painter.
Okay, there we go.
It's not me though.
Oh, this isn't yours.
I did the Southwest one.
Oh, I
James
see.
did the airlines PNG.
It's prettier. It's got a lovely bird of paradise on the tail. It's my favourite.
It's got bird.
It's got bird, yeah.
The Twin Otter is actually a really tricky paint kit to use, and I've actually opened it up half a dozen times with this is Janky's one. I've actually opened it up half a dozen times with the, you know, great dreams of painting all sorts of wonderful schemes on it, and always you know, closed it down again afterwards, going, too difficult for today, and then yeah, so I just opened it up again and went, right, I'm going to do this, and so yeah, I want to do more now.
Now, can you give me some advice? I have my map here, and I'm assuming that I'm at Kagi, but I might be wrong. It could be Ifogi.
You're at
Is it
no, you're at
Kagi?
Kagi.
Okay,
Now,
great.
if you'd like to simulate, I believe it's the world's shortest commercial flight in PNG or in anywhere. It's you fly from Kagi or from Ifogi to Kagi or Kagi to Ifogi. It's around about a 90-second flight. I think we do it slightly quicker in the sim, and then yeah, we can take it from there. But it's a fairly common flight. This, I think they use something like bus tickets as airline tickets there. You see them collecting these little coupons, and they take them on board chickens and a bunch of bananas, whatever. But the trek is actually between the two towns takes them so long that it's much easier just to jump on the local taxi aircraft and fly it in 90 seconds.
All right, so I'm assuming it's behind me. Is that right?
No, if you just keep the runway heading.
Yep.
And just veer over to your left, and it's like a two-tone. There's some darker green grass at the start of the runway, and there's a village up to the left. It's a very dirt, like they play rugby and all sorts of things on that dirt strip, on that dirt paddock in the middle of the town, so it doesn't give the grass much of a chance to grow. So yeah, just I'll direct you. Just head straight off runway heading and veer about to your, say, 9 o'clock? No, 10 o'clock, and ease off on the power. You'll be, because it's downhill, so you'll be pretty much having just, as soon as you've taken off, ease back on the power and just coast in.
Okay, I think I actually see it here right off to my immediate left. If that's not, I think that's the one.
Immediate left is Donamo, I think. No, Lonamo. God, I get these names confused.
Oh, I might be approaching the wrong airfield then.
There you go. Sit on just over on the left there now. You see that bright green patch?
Okay, this is the correct airfield then. Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Oh, that's a short one.
Yep.
Thanks for the advice about the power, because I was ready to go. Now I've already stalled on this airport once, and I'm already below stall speed as we speak. So hopefully I don't crash it again here.
Yeah. Let's see.
Actually, I came in a bit high.
Yeah, it's very. This is Tim and I used to overshoot this all the time. Believe it or not, it makes you think it's easy, but it's not.
It's not. I think I veered off a little to the left there, or off the runway. It's not as easy as it looks.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Okay, I'm stuck on the hill. Now, this is the other problem that I had to learn, is that you have to be careful. There's a thought that you want to hurry up and slow down because you don't want to overshoot the runway and go into the bush. But on the same token, if you slow down too soon, you'll get stuck. So that's, and I've gotten stuck already. So that it's not fun once you get stuck.
No, you just press the slew button and push it up to the.
And to slew it up. I know that dreaded slew button. I tell you, I try so hard not to touch that. I really do.
Well, let's see. But see, the way I look at it is that flight sims have limitations, and as much as they would like to make it as accurate as possible, it's impossible. I mean, you wouldn't get stuck in real world. The Twin Otter would have plenty of power to get up there.
Ooh.
But,
this is one of our limitations here. We get the bouncy here. Okay. I'm going to line her up, Ken, and then you want to give me the next heading for us?
I reckon Tim ought to do the next one.
Tim, okay. Soon, if I can manage to line it up here.
No, you go for it, Ken. These are all yours.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, all right. Let's go. Lonamu. So if you take off and make a right-hand turn, or actually probably do a left-hand circuit over the top of Ifogi, okay, and if you follow straight over from Ifogi village, you'll see Lonamu. Lonamu is the one that's on the sort of crest of the hill. You can it looks very short, but it's actually longer than it is. than it looks, and it's sort of you can actually land this one from either direction. One of the few that you can do from both directions.
You said it. Which
Um,
what's the name again?
Lonamu,
How do you spell it? I'm just looking at it on my map just so I
um,
get an idea of what direction. Oh, okay, here we
Launmu.
go. Okay, so that's going to be straight out, and then I think that's a right turn. Is that correct, or is that a left turn?
Well, probably the easiest way to you want to give yourself a bit of a chance to get an approach. If you try and go, if you take off and just go right, I think you're going to end up getting into all sorts of trouble. I'd be taking off and doing a left-hand circuit
I
and
see.
coming in over the top of Fogey, which is just to the right of you. The actual village is just to the right of you, if you look, you know, um, and there just gives you a bit of time to set yourself up
Okay.
for that approach.
Let's do that. And I apologize in advance. You guys gave me some advice to remove the control tower view because every time I hit it, the scenery has to reload. So I didn't take the time to do that, and I completely forgot. So my fault. For some of you, if you're noticing the scenery is reloading, that's because the control tower view is screwing with the scenery, and that's something that I was supposed to fix before I started. So that's my
What
fault.
there,
Okay.
there is another way you can um, change views. I just go right click on the screen and just go, spot or whatever,
Good
and
point.
then
We'll do that.
right, right,
That's a good point. Okay, here we go. So, okay, we'll take off. We'll make a left circuit, and then we'll turn around and come back in. Now, because you're watching me on the delay, you probably won't see it until after me. So that's the
I
only
know,
downtime.
I know.
I got to tell you, keeping it centered on the runway is difficult as well on these runways because not only are they not flat, like there's a gradient, but there's also they're sort of sloped from side to side as well.
Yep. Yeah, the tennis is slide. It's to slide to the left on this one.
But that's the great thing about the Twin Otter is it's got enough power to make it happen. That's why I love this plane. Aerosoft did
That's right.
a magnificent job with this aircraft. They
Oh,
really did. It's
our
It's
gorgeous.
favourite
it's
plane.
hands down my favourite. I love the first version, um, but this is I mean this is probably my favourite aircraft in the sim completely. I just love the detail. At
It's
the top
incredibly
there,
versatile too.
control panel at the front there, and yeah, it's great sound. I think they did a wonderful job on it.
As a matter of fact, I featured this. I was practicing some approaches over at St. Bartholomew Airport in the Caribbean, and that's a very difficult approach, a project by Fly Tampa. And I remember there were two guys watching, and they saw me whip out the twatter, and they go, "What's that?" They hadn't seen it before, and they went out and bought it that moment. So I thought that was really funny. They were busy searching online for the best price and went out and bought it, and they love it. So I thought that was incredible. I thought, oh well, hey, these sort of
And
daily streams are doing some good.
and the thing about it is that you you have to manage your power extremely carefully because the turbines take a while to spool up.
Yeah, they
So
do.
you reduce your power, and then you find yourself in a situation like how I've done so many times. I end up stalling because instead of using the feather to adjust my power, I've been using the throttle, and that's just not the way to go. You can get yourself in all sorts of trouble. Okay, so from what I can see here, now that strip that I can see there, that's actually where you've been before, over on the left there, but further, it's more to the right, I think, than where you are now. Um,
Well, I've got two strips in my immediate vision, so I'm hoping the one by the
on the
time
right.
the is it the one that I'm passing on the right now to my immediate right? It's going to take you a
Um,
second to get to the delay, but worst case scenario, because I think the one that I'm looking at now on my right is the one that we've
that's
approached
Kagi.
already.
Yeah, that's Kagi, yeah. Okay, fly past Kagi, and you can approach it from the other side. So, um, yeah, I'd reduce power, I'd reduce height a little bit higher there. And it's probably, from what I can see, it's if you take a line sort of perpendicular from Kagi, Lonomo's over on the other side to the right.
So I gather by the time you catch this, because I'm already on approach to one of the airfields already. So
Okay, this is Bedonama you're coming into now.
okay,
That's fine.
that's the thing. They're so close together that it's almost confusing. It's like, is it this one? Is it that one? It's now this is the one that I got stuck on before.
Yeah, this is the one that looks flat, but it's actually quite steep.
It's very steep. So the
Yeah,
mistake I made was coming off and braking too soon, and then I didn't have enough power to get up the hill.
yeah. Your landings are very good.
I've been trying to practice a bit, but I got to be honest.
Yeah.
I think I'm still quite a bit rusty here.
Well, I think this is one of the things that we all love about bush flying is that you do have to practice. It's you can't just you know do it first time and you get bored with it. This you really have to fly the thing down onto the ground.
Okay, so I've gotten stuck again. I
It
thought
didn't
this
look
time I
like it.
gave it more power, but no, I got stuck again, and I tried to take it all the way through the end. But I'm going to try to do this a funny way and try to back it up like a car, which is sort of what I did before. And, oh, but then I strike the tail, so that's...
Yeah, that last little bit up the top there is extremely steep. Um,
Come on. Oh, she's trying, but she just doesn't have enough. Okay. Well, we're probably going to have to hit that slew button.
you're gonna have to get over your fear of the slew button. I think.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm stuck. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to hit the slew.
I don't think anyone of us has ever not used the slew key, mate. So I think it's one of the
It's going to be compulsory up here.
I think so. Till you really master it. I think otherwise it's trying to do reverse
Okay, you know what? I'm just
three
going
point
to go
three
ahead and
point
take it.
turns.
The downside is once I'm on that hill, it's going to roll whether I like it or not, parking brake or not. It's going to go for it. So
Yeah.
I just figure
Yeah.
let's just try to get it off
Yeah.
off the ground here and try to find the other airport if we can this time. Try to find the correct
Yeah,
one.
you may as well go to Tim Kenemo. It's probably the most famous strip in.
Oh, that's the
around-
steep hill? Is that right?
That's the steep hill. Yeah.
Okay.
No one's actually worked out how that strip got named. We've been waiting for someone to twig on, but they haven't. They haven't as yet.
Well, I'll say this. I remember when Aerosoft first released the Lukla airfield, and I'm one of those people, and I'll admit I don't always read the manual. So I
does?
was. It got to the point where all I was doing was just find the approach, turn around on the deck, take off, turn around again in the valley, land again, and doing that back and forth, back and forth. I mean, we're talking as far back as the old Lago Twin Otter, if you guys remember that long ago. Just doing those approaches over and over. And then one day I decided to go exploring, and what I found out was they actually modeled in a couple of other airfields up there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, real men don't read instructions.
There you go.
you know. Yeah, it's considered a sign of weakness. Reading instructions.
Okay, well, I was being very strong there then because I had no clue. And so I was in love with the scenery for maybe 3 or 4 years, just doing those approaches. And then at some point, I got a little bored with it. Just because once you get good at something and it's not a challenge anymore, then it's like, okay, well, I've been there, done that, what's new? And I think this is the next big thing for, especially for challenging approaches. This is it. This really is. And it was that Lukla scenery that was one of the few sceneries that really got me into
There you are. Right in front of you
VFR.
now is that's Lonamo. Right in front of you now.
Okay, so I've already passed it, so we'll go ahead and do the
Yeah.
hill, and then we'll come back and do Monomo now that visually I've seen where it is.
Yep.
One tip I've got for coming into these, I mean, I'd probably advise against trying to do like a tour of one after each other because you'll end up circling around and sort of keep missing them. But if you have like a couple that you line up that you're going to do, I've always found the best way to get into them is to come in really, really low and just follow the tree line up the valley, and so you're actually climbing up into the strip as opposed to kind of trying to drop your plane down onto it. Um, I don't know if that's the official practice or not, but I find it a lot easier to climb
No,
onto
you're
the
absolutely
strips.
right. Because and that's sort of what I touched on at the beginning of the stream is that from when you're high, you're not sure if it's an airstrip or not, and it's not till you get close to it that you realize, okay, yes, that is.
Yeah.
And because right, it could just be simply one of the many different color variations in the terrain, so it's difficult to tell what's what, and if especially if it's your first time in. Now that I've been in here a few times, I've sort of been able to tell what's a airstrip and what's a color variation because it's not till you get pretty fairly close to them do you realize okay this is definitely the strip that I'm looking for.
But don't tell your flying instructor that you do that, because it's
That's
a
a no no.
no-no.
It's a no no.
No, no, you have to assume that you're going to lose your engine on approach, and therefore, if you've got to come in under power, um, it's not the safest procedure. But you know,
Now
this
Ken,
is
I'm
flight sim, and we can walk away from any landing. Yep.
right now I'm assuming you're a pilot yourself, is that correct? You have some interesting stories.
Um, yeah. Well, I learned to fly. I think when I was about 40. Finally got enough money to be able to learn to fly ultralights, and I had an amazing instructor. He'd been a pilot with Eastern Airlines of New South Wales for a number of years, and he'd had thousands of hours. And he was one of these guys that he was so confident in his ability to correct the students' mistakes that he would let you get into some of the worst situations because he knew that he could get out of it if you couldn't.
Wow.
And yeah, I just found him the most. His name's Paul Cook. Sorry, Paul. Oh, gee, I've forgotten it. 20 years ago, Paul Crowfoot, I think it is. And he just really gave me a fantastic grounding on flying. And before he let us take his plane around Queensland, he made us do a meteorological course. We had a mate that actually writes the exams for the local testing facilities over here, and this guy just in 24 hours crammed as much information as he possibly could about reading the weather, and it really came in handy. And yeah, but we did a trip around Queensland, and we landed on beaches. We landed in some of the worst possible strips you can imagine.
Wow.
One of the hairiest moments though was we had engine problems at Longreach, and we weren't able to keep up with the group. So while we were waiting for a part to be flown in for us, what we did was we got to wander around Longreach, and the guy that was putting us up there for a couple of days actually owned was leasing the famous Qantas hangar. And anyway, to catch up, we had to do a bit of a detour, and we went straight across from Longreach to a place called Hughenden, which was not on the normal route. And so what we ended up, the guy's name was Peter, and what he did was
Ouch.
he followed us out to a place called Muttaburra, where they discovered the Muttaburrasaurus. It's one of the few dinosaurs that they've dug up in Australia. And you land on that strip, and you're actually dodging kangaroos, believe it or not. They're not on the main street of Sydney. They're actually on the runway at Muttaburra. But he
No
actually
kidding.
followed us out with. He actually followed us out there with some fuel, and he gave us a word of advice when we left Muttaburra, because we still had a 3-hour flight from there to Hughenden. And he said, look, just hold your compass heading. Don't even try to read the map, because it's nothing like what you'll see. And I'm thinking, yeah, well,
Right.
fair enough, okay. Take it with a grain of salt. And even at 700 feet, the creek that I was going to follow turned into this well, it's called Channel Country, and it's just thousands of fingers of streams going out all over the place. So I thought, okay, well, I can't follow the creek. I'll use the road. And the farmers out there, they don't care about roads, they just drive anywhere. So when you get up, to any altitude, that road turns into just tracks going everywhere. So I realised very quickly that there was no way I was going to follow either the creek or the road. So we picked our compass heading and flew it, and we didn't find, to cut a long story short, we didn't find Huon until about 10 minutes before last light, and we were thinking,
Oh wow.
we're going to have to put it down in the scrub here, and wait till morning. But luckily, about 10 minutes before last light, we saw the sun hitting one of the silos, and it shone out like the most welcome light you've ever seen. And
It's a gift from God there.
We almost cheered. We thought, "You beauty," But yeah, we had some great adventures on that flight. We had to divert around some really foul weather at a place called Tully, up in northern Queensland, which is just before we got to Cairns, and it's known for the highest rainfall in Australia. They've actually got rainwater farms there, and we had local knowledge, and the maintenance guy at a place called Ingham said, whatever you do, don't go direct, go follow the coast. For some reason the rain goes inland and it sort of misses out on the coast. So we thought, beauty, so we followed the coast, and we were flying down at around about 800 feet, staying under the clouds, because there wasn't there was really bad weather. It's always bad weather up there. And we were hearing radio calls coming in from the rest of the guys in the group, having to put down at Tully, having bad weather. They're all landing at Tully, and because we were skirting out via the coast, we actually made it to Innisfail, our next stop, and beat them there. So that was a great trip. And as I said, we had more engine problems at Cairns, and we couldn't go on. But some of the guys went up to Horn Island, which is very close to Papua. You just go across Torres Strait over to Papua, it was just a dream come true to be able to spend that many hours in an aircraft in some of the remotest places of Australia. It was brilliant. Loved it.
That's amazing. I mean, you're an inspiration. I just want to come down and fly with you. I could talk to you for hours, literally. Oh man, that is incredible. Well, if you're watching, I've overshot. So that's my official, I think, first crash up here. I have to be honest. I mean, of all the pilots that I know from around the world, I think Australia is definitely probably one of the most interesting places in the world. I think to fly, just with the different types of terrain, and it's very, very interesting. Unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity yet. So, but Misha, who's one of the Orbix developers, he's sending me pictures of his flights, in and around Sydney, and it's a beautiful place to fly over. Gorgeous from the sky, without a doubt.
Yeah, I don't like cities much. I like the bush myself, but
Absolutely.
Yeah, as part of my training, I had to do a nav flight from a place called Warnervale on the Central Coast, about 50 miles north of Sydney, and there's a laneway, and because of the jet aircraft flying approaches to Mascot from there, you have to stay at 500 feet, and they've actually got beacons, and you follow the flashing beacons through this laneway, so that you don't interfere with the commercial traffic coming and going from Sydney.
I see.
But yeah, it is very beautiful, the Hawkesbury River, and
You'll have to show me some pictures sometime.
yeah, for sure.
Now, I'm assuming this is Lanumu, is that correct?
Yep.
Perfect. So, let's see, we've done Kagi, we've done Ifogi. I think we've done Bon. Oh, here we go. Bodhi Numo. Is that correct? I'm sorry, I'm really butchering these names here.
I'm not sure how
Um,
that, but Bodymo, I think it is. Anyway,
Bodimo.
it's
We're all in the same boat.
Okay,
yeah,
perfect. So I think the next stop then is Bordy. Is that right? I think that's
greedy.
right.
Yep.
And I think if I depart off this runway, I think it's a right turn over Timkanumo, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken. But you might be able to
Uh,
help better direct me.
yeah, that sounds pretty good to me.
Okay. So I'm sure you saw that overshoot that I did there. That was pretty bad. That's actually
Yeah,
the
well,
first time I've used the thrust reversers. Believe it or not, I've tried to make it a point of coming in just above stall to avoid having to do that. But
yeah, well, this is the beauty of it. Um, you don't always nail it, and that makes you want to come back and try it again.
absolutely, I almost want to do it now, but for the sake of time, I don't take failure too well. It's like, you know what? I'll do this all day till I get it right, or I won't sleep. Okay, here we go.
Uh,
All right. So let's see. I think we are going to hang a right turn, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
And
it's a
that,
right-hand turn.
and to be honest, these two last airstrips. Actually, I think there's three more. There's one which is the abandoned airstrip, and we'll leave something to the imagination for those who haven't purchased the product yet to go out and look at the abandoned airstrip. But you guys have added some objects out there as well. Not as challenging, but certainly a worthwhile visit nonetheless. But now these two particular airstrips, which are relatively close to each other, which is Bordy and Malay maybe. I haven't
Yep.
been to either one of these yet, so I'll be approaching these for the very first time
Yep. Oh, look.
live.
Well, the people watching are in for a treat with Baridi, I think. I
Very
don't.
difficult.
One of the guys on the forums actually mentioned that he wasn't using a twin otter though, so that's cheating.
Oh,
But the twin otter is probably uh, one of the most difficult planes to get in to these of the bush. It's a great bush plane, but you really have to. You really got to practice and nail it. Something like a C185 tail dragger, you can pretty much get into most of these, and because it's smaller, you don't have to the spooling up problem with the thing. You can just add power when you have to. But Baridi is a really tough strip. I'm taking bets that you're going to go slewing off to the left-hand side of the strip as you come in. But I don't. I'm only kidding. But yeah, it is one of the most challenging. Um, but it's for that reason it's one of my favourites. I think it's Tim's favourite too.
Yeah.
yeah, well, I
It's
believe I
just
found it, but I could be wrong. I don't know where you guys are on the stream, but I feel like I've got my eye on it now.
uh, I can't see it on the script. No, you, I think you're further away than that. No, um, it'll be on your right, and it's you recognise it by it's quite a rich orangey earth colour. Um,
It's not a
and
two-way
it's
airstrip, is that correct?
you come in uphill, and one of the guys described it as a dog leg to the right for all those golfers out there.
Okay.
But don't try and cut the corner because you won't make it.
Okay, well, the airstrip I'm looking at now, it doesn't actually have a corner. I'm wondering if I'm even looking at an airstrip. I feel like I am. I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and pass it, and then by the time you see it on the stream, you can tell me if that's one of the airstrips,
Yeah.
and then I can come
When I
back and
look,
approach again. But maybe it's not an airstrip.
want to look around a bit so I can get my bearings.
Sure.
One thing with the twin otter that I've found is quite handy is to keep the power on full, so you've always got the power there, but to use the prop tilt levers to reduce the thrust. Because yeah, the spooling up is quite an issue. I know it's the same with the default caravan. It's always got me a cropper. It probably easier if you've got one of those little joystick throttle things to be able to do it. Because
Yeah, the
I'm
new
never
SciTech
that good at
actually is
getting the
nice for that.
controls in the
Yeah,
cockpit with the VC. It's quite hard with the mouse, especially if your cockpit's jumping around.
which is
I think
definitely
we're
the case
lost.
here. If I pan behind us, hopefully this gives you some bearings now. You should be able to see the scenery now from this point of view. Hopefully the screen isn't too pixelated.
No, that screen's coming in great. I'm just lost.
Well, I've just turned the aircraft into position, so you should be able to find where we are
You're
now.
gonna have to start. You're gonna have to fly. Hang on. Did I say it to your right there?
Or I'll do
It's
this.
hard
I'll
to
come back
it's
over
hard
to.
to talk and concentrate.
Oh, it's okay.
As it's the old men's problem. We can't do two things at once. You can fly, or you can talk. You
Right.
can't do both.
And you can see I'm trying to do both, and I'm failing miserably. I'll take us back over to Tim Canumo, and then hopefully you'll get your bearings from there. I think that might be a good starting point.
Yeah. Well, there's Kagi. I can see Kagi. So you've still got to head. You've got to make a right-hand turn. If you line up with Kagi, Ifogi, getting mixed up myself, and sort of
Below you
follow
there.
the runway heading of Ifogi.
Okay.
Right below you is one. There it is.
Oh, there it is. Just found it. Oh, it's in a canyon. Okay,
No,
it's
on a
not
ridge.
what I'm looking at now. I see something. It looks like it's not at the top of a hill.
Yeah,
It's at the base of a
I
hill,
think-
though.
You'll see
Yeah,
a village just
it
above.
follows the ridge line. Yeah, I can see. Yeah, I can see Baridi Village there below you, and that's merely off to your right.
No, yep, that's it.
See, I'll stick with the internal view until it comes into view for you guys. Are you guys at the internal view looking from the top of the aircraft down?
Yeah.
Okay, so which is that?
That's merely merely down under your right wing
Okay.
that I can see at the moment. So if you do go almost the runway heading of merely but back the other way, um, that'll take you to Baridi, and then you'll see it. It's follows the
Oh,
ridge
I
line.
see it now. I just found it. There it is. It is orangey. Okay. There we go. Okay. And I did it's kind of sliding off the edge of the cliff there.
It is.
God, whose idea was it to decide they were going to fly airplanes in here? Oh my goodness.
Tim.
Who was the
Tim-
first guy to do that?
I don't know.
It's like the first guy who decided I'm going to milk a cow and drink whatever comes out. It's like, who was the first guy that said, you know what, I'm going to land a twatter up here one day and it's going to happen?
Well, can you imagine trying to build roads in this
Oh
terrain?
my goodness. No.
So I think necessity was the mother of invention here. I think
Yeah.
the only way they were going to get any kind of transportation going, is to put these little bush strips in. And all credit to these amazing bush pilots that do this on a regular basis and do it so well. And can you imagine having a plane full of natives and with their chickens and all the like
It's
it's
their
just
whole
be
lives.
so
with
different,
them. Yeah.
you know.
It's incredible. I'm making kind of a long left turn around to try to drop some altitude here and
Yeah.
bleed off a bit of speed. Now that I mentally know where it is. And then we'll turn back around and try to approach it. Yeah, I can see though the left side of the runway sort of dips off the side of the mountain, so I guess you can't approach it straight on. You have to sort of angle the aircraft along the terrain, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I tend to um, line up a straight approach and not try and turn the aircraft
Oh, really?
once you touch
Okay.
down. Yeah, so in other words, come in a little bit to the right, um, a little bit to the left, and have you sort of angling slightly right. Um, if that does that make any sense? Um, so that so in other words, imagine a straight line from slightly on the left-hand side of the strip at the touchdown point, um, aiming to cut the corner slightly, but don't cut the corner, if you know what I mean. Like,
Okay.
stay, yeah. It's one of those that it's it's three times the charm, I think, usually.
Well, it's probably going to be the case here. So, for those of you who are watching, prepare to watch me crash. I haven't done this one
Yeah,
yet, and it's proof because I didn't even know how to get here. So,
get the
this is
popcorn out, guys.
this is it. This is it. I was quickly looking at the laptop here, and someone was pointing out the airports up in the French Alps by LLH Creations, and yeah, I actually forgot to mention that. For me, though, I've actually mastered all of those airports long ago. So whereas I still enjoy them, the challenging element is sort of gone from it. So I'm not as challenged anymore by those airports. And I mean, I've had them for a number of years, just flying them in FS9. But I definitely still enjoy them. They're very scenic and they're a lot of fun. And I definitely go for them when I'm looking for a change of scenery. But I've mastered those, and I think it's going to take me quite a bit of time to master these as well. Now, right now, I'm just looking at where the threshold of the airstrip is. It's sort of odd, actually, because, right, it is in a corner. And you said not to try to cut the corner, so the point is to approach it straight onto the threshold. Is that correct, Ken?
No, 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 no. But come in slightly to the left of the threshold,
Oh, I see,
so
I
that
see.
you're not, because if you look at it, that's a sharp corner as you come straight on, and I don't think I've never been able to take that corner. If I touch down, coming in following the actual approach angle, I can never turn it. So what I do is I come in a bit from the left-hand side
I
and
see.
touch down a little bit later, cutting off that first little bit of the touchdown zone, so that you're more lined up. You've got more chance of being able to make it that way.
And maximizing the space of the airstrip. I see what you
And
mean.
there's plenty of there's actually quite a bit of room, and there's a lot of uphill. So you'll see when you get there that you've still got plenty of time to slow down.
Now, am I likely to get stuck on this hill? Is it a steep
Less
gradient?
likely with this one.
I know I shouldn't
Less
ask
likely
you. I
with
should
this
just
one.
see it and fail, but I'm
I
compelled
don't.
to ask.
I don't think I've got. I don't think that's been a problem for me with this one. Running off the corner, ending up down in the gully on the left's my favourite trick with this one.
Here we go, guys. All right, wheels down. Oh, that was hard. Ouch, that was hard. Okay, well, I think I upset some chickens.
We're still watching it.
Okay, you're still watching it.
I'm
Yeah,
still
I
watching.
came down really hard.
It's all looking good so far here.
Yeah, yeah, it's looking very good.
How could this go wrong?
I'd call that a good landing. I don't.
Yep,
Yeah, that's pretty good.
pretty
I
good.
felt like I hit that pretty hard. I felt it. I almost felt like I pulled a G or two on my stomach just as I was coming down. Now somehow
Yeah,
I've managed to get myself stuck again. Let's see. Looks like she's trying to inch her way up the hill, but very slowly.
yeah.
It seems to be a different thing with different planes. I was doing some testing of that very late in the piece, and I found that the default caravan seemed to have no problems going anywhere.
Really?
Because at first I thought it might have been a tricycle gear problem,
Uh huh.
um, uh, and then I was trying with the default Cessna 172, and that just didn't seem to have enough power to operate up here properly. But the default caravan seemed to be a bit like a Jeep in comparison. But yeah, keeping the speed up, whenever I've approached these strips, I always come in, and as soon as the front wheel goes over the beginning of the strip, I hit the reverse thrust, and as soon as I start feeling the reverse thrust kick in, I actually kill it again to stop, so I can keep a bit of momentum to get up to the top of the strip, because you want to get up to the top and then at least swing around so that you're sideways on the top of the strip so you can park.
So you can park, right? I remember talking to you about that before.
And then you've got the opportunity to roll around and leave again. This one's got a nice little level spot at the top there to sit.
This one does, yeah. I think I've got a little bit of place to turn around here. I think I'll definitely get the Coronados a try. I wonder how the Islander would operate up here. I'm sort of tempted to try that.
Yeah,
at a later date.
I've got that. It's one of my favourite little planes.
I love it.
Actually haven't. I had it installed for a while. As a developer, we do lots of fresh, clean installs of FSX, because we're always stuffing it up with dodgy files and testing things for other people, and so I generally reinstall my FSX 3-4 times a year.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get a bit tired of reinstalling everything again, and you tend to just put on what you need to use.
All right, now, sorry, just really quickly, now, for the sake of argument, I feel like I'm going to have trouble taking off. I think I'm going to have to hit that slew button again. Otherwise, I'll spend a half an hour trying to maneuver it into the correct position. But I think I need to be in this far corner in order to
Make sure
maximize
you're
the
using
full
some
length.
flaps too.
Oh yeah, I haven't put the flaps down yet, but I think I'm just gonna slew over to the side a little bit, because I feel like I'm gonna fail if I try to just take straight off from where I'm sitting now. Let's see. I'm gonna cheat and back it up a little bit too, and give myself some more runway. So for those of you who are watching, hopefully this is giving you something of an idea of sort of the mini heart attacks you're going to come across. You're definitely probably not going to be breathing much on these approaches, because I'm certainly not. I call them mini heart attacks. You know, when you're sitting on your chair and you're rocking backward in it and you almost fall back, but you catch yourself and you have that jump in your chest. That's what this is kind of like. Especially when I landed, I felt like I put it down way too hard.
One thing I noticed when we first got these strips into the sim, the very early part of the project, one of the first, we were trying to stay inside the VC cockpit, for sort of realism's sakes. One of the first things I noticed was after taking off, I would instantly get lost and disorientated as to which direction I would need to be going next. I can't imagine what it's like when you're actually there.
I can't either. In fact, I think I would be too afraid to be a passenger on one of these flights, to be honest. I mean, I've always asked myself, if I had the opportunity, would I ever, get on a flight up to Lukla? And you see all these YouTube videos where even the pilots are praying each time before they take off, and it's because it's the nature of the environment. I mean, and there have been a lot of incidences there, and I think the last one, as recently, I think was a couple years ago. But I always try to think, as a person who's in love with aviation, my heart says, yes, do it, you're gonna love it. My brain says, yeah, maybe not, dude. So I find myself torn between ever doing that in real life, and but I imagine it has to be a thrill, equally to probably being a passenger on an F-18 going off a carrier deck. That must be what it must feel like, both going in and out. So it is a dream of mine to one day in real life be a passenger on one of those flights, but then I question as to whether or not I have the, and pardon my language, the balls to actually do it.
Yeah, but they lost an airline's, the exact plane that you're flying, same model and airline, lost one of those in 2009, and full respect to everyone who lost their lives on that. I think it was 17 or 18 people. They were, I don't think they were quite clear on the final numbers of people, but it was, they took off from Kokoda, and I don't think they made it out. I can't remember the exact details of it. There's a YouTube video, the news story about it.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
But Papua New Guinea is absolutely notorious for aviation disasters.
Oh wow!
Well, it's the weather closes in very quickly,
Yeah.
and at that altitude, you quite often find yourself flying in cloud. Um, you know,
One of one of the problems with Papua New Guinea is like every afternoon, because it's in the equator. Pretty much every afternoon, the weather comes in and you get storms and rain. So a lot of the flying is done in the morning, but then obviously in the morning you've got the wet dew problem on the grass, so it's really slippery. And a lot of the strips have got warnings to not fly it in the morning in a certain direction because of the sun as well. But yeah, it's a notorious place to fly. Just the weather and it, a number of the mountains here are 4,000 meters as well. So it may not quite look like that in the sim. That there's quite a bit of an elevation in these mountains, Owen Stanley's.
Okay, well, I'm hoping now that I'm approaching from the right direction.
yeah, that's the right direction.
Okay, perfect.
Speed looks good.
Well, I'm just above stall here. I might need to.
You look a tad high, but
You know what it is? I'm freaked out by the trees. I know that if my wheels hit them, nothing will happen. But it's my imagination. If my wheels hit the trees and I feel like they hit them in my mind, then I failed. So the simulator won't necessarily crash because of it. But yet I get really freaked out by those trees down there because I don't know what the base elevation is to clear those. Oh, this
Yeah,
is
for,
pretty.
going back to your point on whether you'd have the courage to fly, be a passenger on one of these trips. Um, if you've never flown a plane, if you've even flight sim or otherwise, you tend to have less fear.
Oh no.
You tend to have this remarkable belief in the pilot's ability. It's only once you get a little bit of knowledge about what flying's about that you start to doubt the pilot's skill. Oh, nice landing.
I almost hit the Millie airport sign. Look how close I got to it. Oh my goodness. I gotta say, I haven't had this much fun in a long time. I really appreciate the fact that you guys took the time to do this. I really do.
Yeah. Complete with tarps on roofs. That was Tim's idea.
I actually thought that you guys did a great job with that. I mean, it looks like it's photo real. I mean, was there any just sort of photography that you found for that, or was it just easy to just make sort of a generic hut and?
We made 60 different types of hut. Can you believe it? And Tim was always sending more and more photos. I've got a hard drive full of photos that Tim kept sending me. Look at this one, look at this one, look at this one, And the huts evolved gradually over a number of months as we got better at roughing them up, making them look more rustic and authentic, But we limited ourselves to about a library of about 60 huts, I believe. Lots of little enclosures. Some of the models I don't think we've even used. We made this huge library of models, and then thought, okay, we should have enough here to just about replicate any village, and we did put a lot of effort into trying to make if you look down at the actual huts themselves from a top-down view, you'll actually see that the thatched roofs have got a feathered edge to them, so that they actually look like the rough edges of what
we
a
matched
thatched
all
roof
the
look like.
matched all the building amounts too. So for each village, all the the layout of the buildings is all pretty correct. Obviously, with the imagery up here, it was very hard to come by. Ken did a wonderful job with taking and painting basically his own textures into it to sort of recreate it. We used the photoreal as more of a guide for where the strips would be in the sim. Obviously, we were able to get some half decent imagery for Kokoda, which formed sort of a major part of the project. But again, Papua New Guinea is one of those places where it's really hard to come by. usable information or usable data.
I can imagine.
I'm a bit of a an internet trawl animal, and I've got various sort of slightly private methods that I use to scour and scan for keywords. And so, I can run numerous searches at the same time and just harvest data, and then I just have to go through it and delete all the stuff that's not relevant. And then I just sort of feed it to Ken through his Skype box. Um, and so, probably, a good third of this project was actually just research and data collection and just trying to work out, trying to get as many pictures of the strips, because we make use of all the pictures that the trekkers take when they're up there, and most of their pictures are not actually usable. I wish people were taking more pictures of the runways.
Right.
If anyone's listening that goes there, please take more photos of them.
Absolutely.
Like with some of these strips, we don't actually have any ground photos of, say, this place, for instance. So we just use our own imagination a little bit and the top-down view to work out the location and placement. And but for some of the other more well-travelled ones, because this is off the Kokoda track, so it's not as trodden upon. The main ones that get visited would be Kagi, Lonamu, and Afogi, and Minari is a well-known stop.
That's your next stop, by the way.
Yes, it is.
Everyone camps there, and there's quite a few pictures of the terrain and the layout.
Can you do me a favour for this last trip?
Yeah.
Andre?
Sure.
Can you refresh your scenery?
Sure.
And make sure you got the special effects turned up to normal. I'd
Okay.
love
Let's
the
check that
viewers
out.
to see that we put a lot of effort into getting smoke effects out of chimneys and old boilers and things, and they haven't seen them yet.
Let's see. Special effects.
Sorry for interrupting you, Tim.
Distance. Actually, let's just turn all the effects up high so that way we see it properly. And let's refresh the scenery. Just when you say scenery, just refreshing the scenery library. Is that correct?
Yeah, just go to World Scenery Library and refresh it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little bug with P3D at the moment.
Yeah, it has very little effect on frames. The effects, it's really, especially in P3D, doesn't seem to impact at all.
And so what I'm going to need from you, Ken, is to sort of direct me. I have my map on the iPad here, but obviously it's not. It's the Google Earth map. So I'm going to still need sort of a heading from you to make sure I'm going in the right direction. I hope we don't get lost.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
If you
Actually,
go
Tim's
back to the
probably
main
better-
cluster of strips and pick up the track again, because the track goes through Minari.
Oh, actually, you're right. That's right. It does. The green track. That's right. You know, yeah. Let's do that. Let's follow the track. And then once I'm airborne, provided I don't take out some plants with me, that's exactly what I would like to talk about next is the vegetation and if any of the vegetarian is actually or vegetarian, excuse me, the vegetation is specific to this project or are they more or less from the Orbix libraries? Because what I noticed at Kokoda was a species of palm tree, which is very nice, by the way. That entire grove of, I don't know if they're palm trees, but the entire grove of trees just opposite the runway there, that looked like, they looked new. So if you guys want to go into the vegetation a little bit, and I think one of the things that stood out to me about this project first were those trees. And one of these, I think that's the first thing that blew me away was the thought that, oh my God, this is an Orbix scenery in a tropical place. So, and then suddenly it was like, wow, this can open a lot of doors in terms of the direction that scenery development can go in, because I've become so accustomed to either the desert look, i.e. Australia, or the sort of Sierra look, which takes you sort of like into New Zealand or the Pacific Northwest and what have you. So I'm not really accustomed to seeing palm trees in an Orbix scenery. So what can you tell us about
everything that was made for this project was custom made for this project. We used very little of the existing Orbix libraries. We did that mainly because we wanted to keep it fairly self-contained within its folder. And obviously nothing in the Orbix libraries really was that suited for Papua New Guinea. So, we remade everything from the GSE. We repainted that. And obviously Ken took the lead on all the vegetation, so I'll let him go with that. Ken?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, basically, again, Tim was throwing images of vegetation at me, and one of the hardest things to do was to find images of the tropical grasses. That was the biggest challenge. Banana trees are very prevalent there. The different types of palms. There's exotic trees. You know, um, yeah, with quite nice flowers and things on them. But the grasses were the real hard thing because it every strip is beautifully mown by hand. By the way, that's why there's a lawnmower at every strip. Um, but
I didn't notice that.
yeah, there is. If you check when you land at Monaro, you'll find
Yeah,
a beautiful image of my lawnmower. It's in my
nice.
garage.
Is it a
Um,
riding mower?
no, 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 no. Yeah,
Okay,
come on. This is we're talking about Papua New Guinea here.
that's a good point.
Right on.
This is
Come
not
on.
not Pebble Beach here, right?
No, this is. Um, um, but once you get out of the actual runway, the vegetation on either side of the runway is thick. It's like um, you can't walk through it. It's really machete country, and we we wanted to sort of try and replicate that, but of course, every strip being on a slope, um, that became a nightmare because I couldn't make one grass clump and then place thousands of them to match the slope because the frame rate would have just, dropped completely. So what
Right.
we had to do was make very large clumps of grass, right? Because the sim can actually draw a very complicated model and the polygons very quickly, but individual models take almost the same amount. So if you can make a big model, it's much more efficient. So, but then again, if you make it level, then part of the model goes underground and the other part sticks up in the air. So of each of the grass models, there's about 10 separate models, one at 1 degree, one at 2 degrees, one at 3 degrees, so forth, up to about 10 degrees, so that we could match the slopes of the runways. So that's how we managed to get the the look and feel of the denseness of the vegetation around the strips. Um, a lot of work went into making these vegetation models, and as I said, Tim, with his magnificent research abilities, just kept finding all these great pictures, and we just converted them into vegetation models, and by keeping everything within our own libraries, this was also beneficial to the frame rates as well because we weren't calling on texture sheets from other libraries, which slows the sim down. So by keeping it all contained, it was one of the methods that we managed to use to help keep the frame rates, because you need a smooth experience. It's hard enough flying in these places without a stuttering mess of a sim.
Well, one of the things I noticed, and definitely vegetation, especially incorrectly modeled vegetation, and by incorrectly meaning however you code it, can definitely make or break a scenery visually, but also performance-wise. But I've actually put the counter up there. One of the things I noticed going into the sceneries is, number one, my biggest pet peeve is frame rates. That's a huge deal for me. But there are a number of sceneries out there that have achieved very high frame rates, but then it gets taken away with micro stutters. So you might still be flying in at 60 frames per second, but you're still feeling as if you're getting low frames because these stutters are appearing because of certain objects that just simply aren't very friendly with performance. So in the case with these airstrips, I don't think we've fallen at any point below 40 frames per second. And for the most part, I think the average has been between 50 and 60, which is incredible. And if you guys are watching, well, you are watching, obviously, with the stream, and you have to keep in mind the live broadcasting software is using a great chunk of the CPU. which is killer. And then of course we have all of this modeled, and then Skype is going on, and a lot of use of the internet. So with all these things sort of compounded on, and we're still in the 60s, there's no micro stutters or anything. I mean, you guys have done a splendid job, I think, in keeping in with performance, because as we all know, when it comes to FSX and P3D, the first thing people want to know is how well is it going to perform.
Exactly.
For me and Ken, performance is it would have to be our number one concern at all times. We've no disrespect to anyone else, but we've always made that our priority, especially in this project. It just like you know one thing that you've got to remember is that me and Ken we're simmers as well. We're users. We love everyone else's scenery. We fly everything that we can get our hands on. We're very avid simmers. So yeah, I mean, we know all too well what it's like to come into an airport, and then you've got the stutter or the, like I think I find stutters more annoying than say low frames. Low frames you can always cure with dropping a setting or two. Like the extremely dense autogen setting up here can cause some animated birds to appear in the autogen at the very high level setting. So I've always run just at one notch back from maximum. And that tends to get rid of all of those birds in the autogen.
I see.
But then again, they're really nice to see the cockatoos flying around, and you'll find the areas of the dense forest. But frame rates has always been number one concern. Good frame rates equals good fun, basically. And also with the aircraft that some of the developers are putting out are absolutely amazing. Some of the stuff I'm seeing coming out, and we are so looking forward to that Porter. The Pilatus.
Oh yes.
Yeah, bring on the
That is
Porter.
like, come on. I'm always rocking up there for him, like kind of refraining from posting anything kind of irritable and impatient.
Right.
If you've ever seen one of those Porters in action, wow.
We follow that Indo Bush pilot guy on Facebook and on his blog pages, and we just love watching his videos and all his photos. And although most of his flying around is in West Papua, the other part of Papua New Guinea, the Indonesian side, we're keeping a very close eye on that, because he is providing some great reference images for us.
Ooh, very nice.
And if anyone is listening and knows anyone who flies here or has been here or taken pictures, please get in contact with us on the forums. You can send either of us a PM and we'll get in touch with you. We would love anything, any information, stories, info about anything to do with bush flying in Papua New Guinea. Just pass it on to us. We are seriously considering another pack. Which would
Please
be,
do.
Which would be another major airport. Off the top of my head, with Mount Hagen, Leh sort of thing, that they're quite large airports, and they've got quite a large user base as well in the real world, and it would be another pack with a numerous amount of bush strips included. So we have got that in the planning stages at the moment, but we're just sort of waiting on more info. We've been actually flooded with offers for aerial imagery and other information for some places in Papua New Guinea. So we're sort of correlating all that at the moment. But yeah, we're very keen to do another strip. The feedback that we're getting from everybody on the forums and around the internet's been absolutely outstanding, and we're actually quite gobsmacked at the reaction and the reception that we've got from this. And so yeah, we're actually sort of quite excited to maybe revisit again after our next project.
Nice approach.
Very nice.
Oh, thank you. And just a reminder as well, with this Twin Otter, given how magnificent it is, for any of you guys who are familiar with Airline 2 Sim, they're actually still working on the Q400 program, but they released the cadet training program recently, and I'm still actually going through my type rating course, but they've also started a program for the Twin Otter, which I think will be released, I want to say sometime in October. And they have actually a real-world pilot from it's one of the UK carriers that's going to be teaching us, and that's going to be just a one program how to fly the Twin Otter. And I think that's terrific because, I mean, we've seen these AOA programs come along and they teach us how to fly 777s and NGXs, but we've never really had anything to come along to sort of bring us along with some of these smaller aircraft. And what I'd like to imagine is that a lot of flight simulation enthusiasts are not real world pilots, and maybe they started off as something for fun and they didn't take too seriously. And then at some point they really started to. So I think to have these training programs, especially for something like the Twin Otter, is going to be great. So I don't know if he's going to be putting any of these airstrips in the training program, but certainly this would be an interesting thing to see in terms of how to properly nail these things. Some are easier than others. I think this was a bit of an easier one, but I'm off looking for the lawnmower now.
It's down near. There's two little. I suppose they look like loos. I suppose there's all sorts of weird shaped grass enclosures, and I don't know what they actually use them for, but it provides a bit of privacy, I suppose, besides going behind a bush.
Was it like an outhouse there, huh?
Yeah, I still notice that your effects aren't working. That's weird.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. Oh, because there should be smoke or something, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a bit
That's
strange.
not good. Let me just double check my effects settings. I know I turned them up high. Let's see. This is prepared V2. So, yeah, the special effects and special effects distance sliders are at maximum. So that's odd.
You see, there's the little chimneys there with the smoke coming out. Sometimes you've... did you go to World Scenery and... you did refresh, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Remember that? Yeah. I think sometimes you've got to be looking at the actual effect when you refresh for it to make it happen.
I can do it again if you like.
I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's something that they're going to fix in the next version of P3D.
Yeah,
So
there's
no
see in
issue
the
with
chat,
it in FSX.
there's a guy about to fall asleep and he's really like to get over to Port Moresby because there's so much to see at Port Moresby.
All right, so let's head over there next. Let's see. Oh, there it is. There's the mower. Okay, I wanted to make sure I saw it before I left, so we'll zoom in on it from a distance. And that's modeled after your actual mower there, huh?
Yeah, it's got my fingerprints on it.
Oh, really? Is it that?
I didn't.
Do I really need to get into slew mode and actually get up on that thing, huh?
No, I wouldn't worry. It's just, but I did spend a bit of time modelling it. I wanted it to look like a real lawnmower, so yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, I imagine they have to keep these mowed, obviously, for the planes.
That's the only part they do mow.
Yeah, everything else is the bush, without a doubt.
Oh yeah.
Well, you guys have done an amazing job, especially you, Ken, since the vegetation was your end of the deal here, and just making it feel so tropical.
I think Tim's underestimating his own contribution.
Is
here.
he? Okay.
Yes. No, it was. Look, this was a collaborative effort the whole way through. Tim has a much better understanding of how the sim works than what I do, and his technical expertise on ground polygons and the modelling and all this sort of stuff is really outstanding. I don't think he's going to mind if I mention that he has trouble distinguishing between green and red. So that's why I got landed with the vegetation thing, because I see greens a bit better than what he does. But Tim was always, he had his input, don't worry. He was sort of, can you darken those palm trees look a little bit bright, or this doesn't look quite right, or whatever, you know. He had his hands full with that Port Moresby scenery. I mean, that was, when you get a close look at Port Moresby, that was a real feat, and to keep his frames as high as he did, that's pretty special. So, and I was left to do the bush side of things, but I had heaps of feedback from Tim and suggestions from Tim. So yeah, no, collaborative effort all the way. I'd like to sort of put it that we have skills that complement each other.
Well, they certainly have come together, in my opinion, splendidly, without a doubt. I think you guys make a great team. And as we start to make our way over to Port Moresby, that's what I'd like to get into next is the two of you, how you two met, how you came together, what's the background on that. But before I do, off the top of your head, for either one of you, do you have more or less a heading for me to get back to get to Port Moresby by any chance?
You got a GPS on that thing?
I do.
Yes, look at the GPS. Port Moresby will be
Let's see.
glaring at you.
Oh, I see. It's
We,
closer than I think it is then.
yeah, it's not. It's generally you head. I think it's southwest.
Oh, there it is.
Southwest.
It's okay. I see it
Yeah.
already. I
Yeah.
didn't realize it
Oh,
was that close that it would show up. Okay. Yeah. All right. Good. Let's do
yeah,
it.
it's amazing. You can. What we liked about this package was the fact that um, you can fly a tube liner, right, and land at Port Moresby, and enjoy all the great stuff that goes on there. You know, I mean, if you have a real close look at Moresby, there's detail in there that I mean, I love just getting a chopper and flying around and checking out what Tim's done around Port Moresby. I mean, considering he was only going to just do a rough version of it, I hate to think what had happened if he tried to do a full-on version of the damn place, because
I'm glad he didn't.
it's excellent because
It is.
someone asked, "Oh, is this right? There's a DC3 attached to one of the buildings," and within about 10 seconds of the guy putting the post up, Tim's come back with a photo, the real photo of the DC3. There's actually a restaurant, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah, it's actually an internet cafe these days, I think.
Internet cafe, sorry, yeah.
Hotel.
Yeah, that's actually attached to the building, and people enter it through the building and go in and go on the internet. So, but just there's a mural. There's so much stuff to find just looking around at Port Moresby. It is beautifully done, you know, and so far the focus has been on these bush trips, but you know, people are underestimating the value that Port Moresby brings to it. It's awesome. It really is a beautiful strip.
Well, we originally started out with Kokoda being the main strip, and then the bush strips after that. But then, we realised that everyone in the sim is probably going to be starting from Port Moresby, and we sort of thought about maybe doing an enhanced version, a little bit like what Neil does with the regions airports, and very quickly, once you go and place a big box for the terminal and you go, no, it doesn't look right. It's just before you know it, you've collected a couple thousand pictures, and next thing you know, you've got some big model underway. We started out with very light plans for it, just make it look a bit better, and then before we knew it, it was a full blown sort of project. Most of my efforts in this project was put into Port Moresby. The imagery that we got for it was I would call it apocalyptic, as is much imagery in Papua New Guinea, but Ken did an amazing job on returning that to a lifelike state. But yeah, like what Ken was touching on before there, one of the things that really made this attractive to us was the distance that you can travel. It's a 10-minute flight from Moresby up to the first of the strips, and so for the user, who's short on time, you can do one of the longer regional flights, or you can do a 15-minute flight up to the hills and land, or you can do a half-hour flight, or even if you're really short on time, a 45-second flight. So
Yeah,
Well, certainly, yeah.
and I just noticed someone's asked about the frame per second. Frames, the frames around Moresby are fantastic.
They are.
Yeah. So yeah, there's no problems there. Hanger for you. Hope that helps.
Well, I think they'll find soon enough once we get over there. They'll see what the frames are, and I'll be sure to leave the benchmark up on the screen. In fact, I'm pretty sure that both of you missed it, but before I did, oops, I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing here. Before I went into that stream earlier this week where I was just fooling around in the bush strips, I actually did a stream prior to that, just putting a little bit of spotlight on Port Moresby. and all the comments on the comment section were all overwhelmingly positive. They were actually quite shocked at just how detailed it was, and I'm certainly glad, Tim, that you did go full on with the quality of it. In fact, there was only one thing that I actually did note, because I am something of a critic. And that was that in the grass textures I felt in some areas were a little blurry, but that was really it. As far as everything else, it was 100%. But when I looked at that, then I thought, if you take that and you add it along with just how great the performance is, and the level of quality on the buildings, especially the main terminal, it's almost unnoticeable. And it's not that it's blurry. It's just not as sharp as that I've seen in other works. So that was the
Yeah.
only negative thing that I had to point out, and probably even in and of itself is not really something negative.
We really had a choice between that or another version of that, and the other version of that had a lot of cloud cover, and that's something that a lot of these equator locations have a great deal of problems with, is cloud interrupting the imagery. And there's not really much you can do when the cloud covers half the airport. You can't just
Right.
fix it up with the Photoshop brush. So yeah, the imagery for Port Moresby, it isn't great in my books, but Ken did quite a reasonable job with sort of bringing it back to life again. Um, but as always, it's one of the hardest things especially for Papua New Guinea, because uh, most of the imagery, the good stuff, is probably taken for mining companies, and it's not exactly over the town, um, and probably more kept for areas where they're actually looking at mining or doing some sort of commercial activity. Um, but yeah, I thought about adding some volumetric grass to the airport, but once I started looking at what would be involved with that, it's quite a lot of. I consider it would have quite a bit of a hit to cover that whole field with grass. The airport, as it stands at the moment, is around about 140,000, which it's all in one big model. So that's the trick to it, is keeping things in a single model, and also keeping the texture count as low as possible. So I did a lot of optimization there and squashing things in, and you have to make a lot of choices, a lot of compromises and choices in flights of design. Um, you know, Probably half the time you're fighting the constraints of the simulator, and the way things are constrained a lot. The non-developers probably wouldn't have much of an idea of some of the sort of hair pulling that goes on with a lot of development work. Grey hair and long nights and unresolved issues, and so yeah, a lot of development time is spent making compromises. This will work, that'll work. Lowering the resolution on certain things. With Moresby, it's all been AO baked with the ambient occlusion and advanced lighting from 3ds Max. So of course every face of every building is unique. And also the other problem I had with Port Moresby is it's one of the few projects I've done where I didn't have anyone that could go on the ground and take photos. So I relied mostly on photos that were taken out the window of planes, and
Oh wow.
a number of photos that were taken on the apron looking back at the buildings. Getting shots of the ground side of the buildings was one of the hardest things. There just doesn't seem to be a lot of people taking photos of this airport. So, I've collected maybe about 2,000 photos of the airport, and none of them are usable as a texture. So everything you see at the airport, I've handmade that texture. Compromises. It's frustrating. You want to make it the best thing possible. You want to do everything actually the way it is actually shown, but you're always fighting something. If it's not frames, it's trying to find information on buildings. We always have the top-down image to work on, so we know what shape buildings are and where they are, and what the general roof color is. But the hardest one is actually getting the height of the building, and especially in relation to other buildings. So I was lucky in that respect that there was a series of photos that were taken along the main runway looking back at the buildings, so I could get the heights of them fairly accurate. to one another. Um, Myself, I'm from a building background. I've spent 10 years as working as a builder's offsider and carpenter. And so to me, the construction of buildings is sort of like second nature, really. So I take a lot of that with me. It's almost like virtual building. I spent 10 years building some pretty extreme looking houses. They're always round or oval shaped or mud brick or I've never built a standard house before. Everything I've worked on is just absolutely crazy, geometric domes and all sorts of things. And I ended up injuring my back doing that, and so I had to find a new avenue for income, and so virtual building is it. But yeah, so I mean, in regards to Moresby, it was a struggle pretty much from start to finish for information about things, trying to find info for signage and buildings, and some things I didn't find out until the last week or two. Is that what it looks like? Finally found a photo, and there's all these different ways that you can find reference images of things. We're obviously limited to. We can't just go and take someone's photo off the internet and slap that on a building.
Right.
As you'll probably get a call from someone. There are actually companies that spend their entire day just hunting for
their materials.
Naughty things. And so obviously, we've got to keep like I was saying before with the Anzac thing, we can't actually mention that in our product.
Right.
The same also goes for logos on things. They're always pretty touchy. So we try to keep logos to a minimum. Obviously, there is some reference to a bank on the terminal, but that's what it looks like. I can't just
Right.
make something that's a cartoon box with nothing written on it. If that was the case, I probably wouldn't even be able to call it Port Moresby Airport or something. And that's just not how you do it. You've got to add some local colour and flavour in there. One thing I missed adding that I did want to add was there was some pretty hilarious Papua New Guinea mobile phone billboards in the car park, and I did want to add those, but I also didn't want to get a call from Digicel or Vodafone. But I don't know. I mean, how would you look at it? Is it it's advertising?
I'd
isn't
say
it?
That's what I would
play.
say. It's free advertising.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, I would have chucked them in, but I'm a lot less, careful than what Tim is.
Well, the thing is that as a developer, we make so little from this. It's almost not funny. That if you worked out what we work for per hour, you're probably looking at $2 an hour or something. So, I mean, it sounds a bit drastic, but when you clock up all the time that you spend doing research and just dealing with problems as well, maybe you're not quite sure on how to make something or how to create or texture something that's a bit difficult you haven't done before. There goes 3 or 4 hours of trying it. And then also when you're building an airport of this size as well, you also run into you might have created an issue somewhere in it that you've gone past and you can't come back to the point where you didn't have that issue because you've done too much more content in the time since. So it's an awful lot of time going back and pulling things out that didn't work, or things that clashed, or
Yeah. We certainly didn't get into scenery design for the money.
Right.
It's purely, it's something that we just love doing, and if you pick up a bit of pocket money, fantastic.
Well, I remember when Tim and I first exchanged over Facebook in terms of possibly coming on and doing a live stream for the community. I remember Tim's first words were, "Hey, we're just a couple of guys doing what we love," and that really stood out to me because it's the passion. I think it's obvious. What developers are here to try to make money, and it's obvious what developers are here because they truly love this stuff. And if it's one of the things, and unfortunately Tim already answered the question, but one of the things I always make it a point of asking developers is, where are you as a developer? Is it really more of a business thing for you, or is it something that you do because you truly love it? It's your passion. And It's interesting. I've sort of heard different things from different developers. Everything from like the two of you, where you absolutely love it. It's your passion. From it used to be my passion. I used to love it, but unfortunately it got to the point where I had to start relying on it because maybe I lost my job or whatever the case was. To developers who have always loved it and got into it because they didn't get the airport they wanted. For example, I mentioned that earlier on the stream, and that's the case with Amir Salehi, who founded Flightbeam Studios. He started off because he's a video game developer. He's worked for some large video game companies, and he always loved flight simulation. And he couldn't figure out why Flight Tampa wasn't going back and doing San Francisco. San Francisco is his home airport. No one else was doing it, so he said, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to do it myself. And then there are developers who really are just they're developers. They come from the video game industry, and this is something that they're extremely good at. But as flight simulation as a hobby in and of itself may not be so interested in. And I'm grateful for all developers across the spectrum for obviously donating their talent to the community, because I'm extremely passionate about it. I love it, and that's why I try to do the work that I do, just in terms of trying to do my part in the whole circle of things. But there's nothing that I love to hear more than a couple of developers that just say, hey, you know what, we love it, and we enjoy doing it, because the passion shows, and it's very clear in the work that we've seen today.
Well, this is, I mean,
Thank you.
this is kind of how, and yeah, thank you for that. We appreciate Air Daily sort of exposing us a bit more, and you know, we are obviously tentatively log on to Air Daily every day to see, you know, if it's
Oh, I love that.
comment or something there that make you shudder a bit, or but that's, you know, that's how, you know, that's how I started to begin with. Was you know, I bought FSX back in 2005 or 2006, sorry, and you know, I logged in and I'm like, you know, of course the first thing I do is type in my local airport, Katoomba. It's like, you're like, what? It's not there. What is this?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and then the next thing you know, it's like, right, I want it. Someone make it for me. And then, you know, you get the kind of, yeah, no, you know, someday, mate, we'll get to it. We'll get to it, you know. And it's like 2 months later, why haven't you made it? And it's like, why can't you just make it? And so then the next thing you know, it's like, right, well, I'm going to do it myself. And then, yeah, before you know it, you're placing things and finding the SDK, and the next thing you know, you've bought a couple of tools, and the next thing you know, you've learned how to make a box or a shed or a hangar or something. And it's the most wonderful moment as a new developer to see your first building in the sim, and it's working, and it's, you know, it's shiny, and the texture's the right way up, and you know, it actually looks like a building. And so yeah, that's one of the, you know, greatest things, and it just sort of snowballs from there once you learn those sort of techniques. And
They call it the dark side. You get lured into the dark side. You have this vision of doing something, and then like we both learned at as I said at OzX, where it was just a bunch of guys who had a passion for flight stimming, and they were all discovering, how can we do this, how can we do that, and some guys knew a bit more than others, and we all sort of grew together. You know, we exchange information, how we did things, and you know, the first airport you do, I remember the first one I did in Tassie, a little strip that I actually went out to when I used to jump up on roofs installing satellite dishes, and I remember being out, and this guy had his own private airstrip at the base of Mount Roland.
Nice.
Beautiful place. It gets snow on there occasionally, and I thought, wow, this would be really neat to do. And I jumped onto Google Earth, and look, the imagery doesn't look too bad. So I'd learned how to capture imagery from Google Earth, and there was an agreement, if you were doing freeware, you didn't have to pay for the imagery. So, okay, well, I wasn't trying to make money out of it, so freeware was fine with me. And so I remember capturing this imagery and putting it into the sim, meticulously following, you know, instructions shared from my fellow developers, and flying out there and seeing it, going, wow, look at that, it's there. You know, you can't describe. It's almost like the first time you go solo. Anyone that's the lunar fly, when you go solo, boy, it's a mixture of fear and excitement and utter joy, because you go,